Sports Nation, stand up. It is good to be back. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino, and my good friend, TC Terrence Copper is with us. And we do have a special guest with us, former Saints wide receiver Lance Moore. What's going on, Lance?
Look, man, it took us a little bit to get on here. We're finally on here, so let's get to it.
I love it. I love it. Guys, we're great to be back. Thank you for your patience. Last week we were off just due to some differences. Most of you know why I was out, but thank you for your prayers, concerns, thoughts, and everything. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Well, Lance, look, as a Louisiana guy and native, I got to admit this is a little bit of a bucket list moment for me, having you on. You guys in those seasons, and you and Cop, I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. And look, we're going to have a lot of fun with this, and shout out to our good partners over at betonline.ag for sponsoring all of this. Lance, TC, I got to ask y'all a serious question, man.
Mm-hmm.
How awesome were those seasons with the Saints? Man, Lance, TC, I was watching them highlights today. Lance, the Green Bay Monday Night Football 2-touchdown game, TC, the Atlanta Hail Mary. I mean, look, man, it was an electric time to be alive and Saints fans. I just wanted y'all to share stories. Like, what are some of y'all's favorite moments as teammates and being part of New Orleans?
Lance, we're going to start with you, Lance.
I mean, for me, it's the fans. I mean, like there's no other team in the NFL for sure, but I don't think there's any other fan base in sport that is anything like the Who Dat Nation. It doesn't matter how great the team is doing. It doesn't matter where the team is playing, the support, the feel, the energy, the atmosphere. I mean, it's like none other for sure. And you know, obviously we probably have a million different stories, but I mean, it coming from, you know, playing there in a long time, the thing that to me epitomizes that the most is every single time we played in Atlanta. Like, we go to Atlanta, and Atlanta would end up being a home game for us. They might have a few more fans, but once we start whooping their butts, the fans, basically, their fans are silent. Our fans are turned up in that thing, and it's like it's really weird that, you know, you're playing there, and it really feels like a home game. But it wasn't just limited to Atlanta. That happened in a number of different places. But yeah, I think it's just that's what makes our fan base I think is how they travel, how they are they're so invested in every single game, and being in the media now, I still see it. It's obviously it's a different era now, different coaching staff, and obviously different players, but the Who Dat Nation is the same, baby. Like they come and they show up every single week, and they always remain positive, which is pretty cool for a fan base. But yeah, I mean that's the thing that sticks out to me the most is the Who Dat Nation.
TC, I know that you echoed some of the same stuff, but
yeah, the exact same things. So for me, it's the people. I said this before. It's the people. That is what attracted me to come back and want to do the podcast for New Orleans. Even though I played for Kansas City longer, but I just love New Orleans. I just love New Orleans. I love the people. And that, to me, that's what makes New Orleans. It's the people. It's a family environment. They don't even feel like, they don't treat you like players, they treat you like family. You know, so, and then when you come back from games, you know, everybody's at the airport welcoming you back to the city from games. So those are the things, man, that you miss. Is, of course, I mean, the game is the game, but it's the people of New Orleans. And just the environment that you really miss.
Guys, because for me, it's obviously different. Y'all laced it up. You laced up the cleats. You put on the pads and all that stuff. But look, Sean's out and Drew's out. And the two guys that have been there the most, Pete Carmichael's obviously still there, but it kind of feels like, for me, an end of an era, right? And Sean's literally in the media. Is he going? You know, I saw NFL Network today. Is he going to Dallas? And I'm like, man, please, can we not start that right now? But for you guys to see and take a step back in the 5,000-foot view of Drew and Sean not being in New Orleans anymore, do you feel like the end of the era? And what will this legacy be with all of you guys that have came through New Orleans, Super Bowl, and all these great things and accomplishments? What do you guys want that legacy to be remembered for the most?
Well, I mean, before you can talk about legacy, I think you have to talk about how blessed and how fortunate we all were. I mean, Drew Brees and Sean Payton, 15 years together there. It's outside of Brady and Belichick, it's kind of unheard of. It doesn't really happen that often. Obviously, Peyton Manning was in Indy for a long time, but had a few different coaches. So, we were blessed to have a first ballot Hall of Famer calling the plays for us and pulling the trigger back there, and an eventual Hall of Fame coach and Sean Payton calling the plays and getting us ready each and every week. So, like, last year was an interesting year, I think, to work in local media in New Orleans, because everybody's was just so curious about how good is the team going to be? How is Jameis Winston going to replace Drew Brees? Well, you can't replace Drew Brees. Like, you just can't do it. And when you try to do it in a single season, it usually not going to give you the result that you're hoping for. I think there was a lot of people that were surprised with how good the team played, especially after Jameis got hurt. I mean, to finish 9-8 in that season with that roster and that schedule with a backup quarterback, and really not even a quarterback playing quarterback. I mean, it's a credit to Sean, obviously, for the culture he's created. But to your point, I think that culture will remain. Obviously, Dennis Allen is not Sean Payton, but Dennis has coached with or under Sean for, 10 or 11 of the last 15 years. So
Right.
it's not like there's a completely different face. It's not like there's going to be a completely, a huge culture change, or they're trying to get rid of a bunch of guys so they can bring in their own guys. Like, DA is basically inheriting a playoff roster. Like, if you ask any analyst in the NFL, they'd be foolish if they didn't say, you know what, New Orleans is going to be a playoff team. They're going to be one of the 7 best teams in the NFC this season. That to me is without a doubt. Now, where can they go from there? That's up to them. I think they've got the roster. I think they've got the quarterback. I think they've got the offensive line. They've got the talent and the skill. They've definitely got the defense, something that me and Cop could look back in our days, early days in New Orleans. We ain't had that. Like, we just didn't. I love those guys. But our receiver coach, CJ Curtis Johnson, would come in and say, we got to score 50. And that was real. Like, we just knew we had to outscore opponents. But now they don't have to do that. Like, look at last season. We scored 9 points against Tampa Bay. And we won that game in Tampa because our defense gave up 0. Like, that was unheard of back when we were playing. But to have that defense coupled with the skill on offense, a quarterback that can make every throw, one of the most dynamic running backs in all the National Football League, and then you throw in the pieces that we have on special teams, where we have a guy in Deontay Hardy that can return anything for a touchdown. Like, this team literally has it all. And I know there's going to be a ton of pressure on Jameis, but I think he's going to play free. I think he's going to continue to do what he did last year and take care of the football and take those chances when they're there. But we can't expect him to be perfect. But we don't even need to expect him to be Drew Brees. He just has to be the best version of Jameis. And I think that the sky's the limit for this team.
So Lance, I got something for you, because Blake always asks me about this, or people will chime in and they ask about it when it comes to Pete. They don't think that Pete can call these plays. They feel like Pete might not be the guy to make these calls. To me, like I done told everybody, I done told Blake, Pete been under Coach Payton for how many years he was there? Forever.
16 years.
He knows that offense like the back of his hand. If anybody knows it and ready to step in, I feel like it's Pete that's ready to step in to run that offense. What do you think?
I totally agree. And you know what? I think this offense would have taken a step back had they hired a new offensive coordinator. So, obviously having to relearn a system, or learn a brand new system, new terminology, all those things that go along with learning an offense. They didn't have to do that. They're running the same stuff. I'm sure Pete's going to have his own little wrinkles, but I know that Pete can call the plays, because the only 1,000-yard season I had in my career, he was calling the plays because Sean was suspended. So I definitely have faith in him being able to get the guys in the right positions, giving them opportunities to make plays. And I definitely think that Sean is still going to be an ally. I think that Drew is still going to be an ally. So if he gets in a pinch during the week and is trying to figure something out, which I don't think he will, he's still got access to those guys if he needs a little bit of help. But I honestly, I'm with you. I think that he's groomed for this. This isn't his first rodeo, right? He had the whole 2012 season to call the plays. We didn't have a great team, but we still racked up some points and some yards that year. And I think he's one of the smarter offensive coordinators that has never really gotten an opportunity to call plays because he's been there with Sean Payton.
Everybody firing your questions. I see that a lot of you are firing them in. Continue to fire him. We'll get him in just a minute. Lance and TC, I think to your point, something, and TC, we talked about this before. We kind of went on our little break from last week. Guys, I don't believe that the Saints are going to be dead last in passing this season. Really and truthfully, they don't have a choice. God bless it if Alvin is out. We'll wait and see how that goes. But Jameis was lighting it up. I mean, when you look at the efficiency stats of what he was doing, the worst game he had was technically the Washington Redskins when he threw 4 touchdowns but went 15 of 30. Lance, I agree with you, right? Like, he was doing some really good things, and I don't think if he stays healthy that the Saints are going to be last in passing efficiency or passing yards like they were a season ago. And look, even if you do are able to throw for 2,000 more yards in the season, I think you could win 1 or 2 more games, and then you're into the playoffs like you weren't a couple seasons ago. But let me ask you this.
Well, before you go, let's address the elephant in the room, though. Okay, first of all, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not act like Jameis Winston was throwing to all-pro wide receivers last year.
Right.
Let's not act like Taysom Hill was throwing to all-pro wide receivers. And watching those games up close and personal and breaking them down and analyzing them, there just wasn't the separation that's needed. Now, I understand that defenses are going to be able to play a little bit tighter or do a little bit different things to confuse a quarterback if you have a guy that's back there that's not used to being back there. I totally understand that. But let's not act like Michael Thomas was out there getting open all the time. Let's not act like we had Jarvis Landry on that team or Chris Olave or any of these other guys. So people can say whatever they want about the Saints being last in passing yardage or whatever it might be. But I think this year's version of the Saints is going to be a completely different cast of characters out there catching balls than it was last year. So that to me is pertinent information for people to have, because you can't fully describe what happened last season without putting that little disclaimer in there, like, wait a minute, it wasn't really the varsity guys out. Now, so some of those guys have had some success and made plays. Now, I'm not trying to minimize what Marquez Callaway can do and Traquan Smith and Deontay Hardy. Like, those guys can make plays, but I think that those guys are complementary pieces. You're missing your number one receiver, right? Mm-hmm. Emmanuel Sanders left in free agency last year, or he got cut and went somewhere else. So you're missing your number 2 receiver as well. So basically everybody has to bump up in the pecking order. And I'm not saying that they weren't ready for it, but I just think at this point in those guys' careers, they're more complementary pieces, which I think you'll see coming this season. They'll be, in the 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Whereas, we know that Michael Thomas, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be the number 1 guy out there. And I'm sure he's going to be out for blood because everybody's been talking about the last 2 seasons. And last time we saw him fully healthy, he was the offensive player of the year in the league. So I think he's going to be out, out for blood and ready to prove to everybody that he's back and he's that guy that he was a couple years ago. Jarvis Landry, obviously playing at home. I've heard him say it's a dream come true. He's at home, and this is an opportunity with this team for him to get even further than he's ever gotten before. I think it's
this goes to Jordan,
wild card round of the playoffs.
I'm sorry, but this is Lance. To your point, Jordan brings up Jarvis and Olave are additions. Deep ball, lethal combos. Guys, let me twist his question and let the both of you answer it because you played that position. When you on paper see a guy like Chris Olave, what he did at Ohio State last year, when you see Jarvis Landry and you obviously know what you're going to get from a production standpoint in Mike Thomas, man, that's as lethal as a 3 wide receiver combo that you can get in the league. Literally, they're in the conversation of maybe the best trio, and they haven't taken a snap all together on the same field in a real game. But when you guys see that and that being your position, what are y'all's thoughts when you see that holistically in the preseason?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's a depth situation, but it's also the versatility of that group. Michael Thomas is the starting X receiver, which is usually the backside, weak side receiver, but he also plays a lot inside. So he can play both. Chris Olave is a speed burner, which usually in our offense plays the Z. because back in the day, Cop could run a little bit. So so that guy plays the Z. But Chris Olave at Ohio State also played in the slot. So he's going to be able to play, do a bunch of the stuff on the inside as well. Then you throw in Jarvis Landry, who is one of the best slot receivers in the National Football League in a lot of years, I think. He can do it all inside, but he can also bounce outside. So to have three guys that you can kind of move around and defenses can't get a beat on, they don't know what to do when this guy's in the slot and this guy's outside, or these guys are stacked. They don't there's going to be a real versatile lineup with those guys out on the field. And I mean, you really cover all three levels with those guys. Obviously, Olave is going to be the burner, the top off of the defense guy. Jarvis and Mike T can be the short and the intermediate guys, but they can both go up top as well because they can run. I mean, it's going to be tough for defenses to stop these guys. And for me, it's that versatility that's going to make them so good.
3 years ago, go ahead. One point to that, and TC, I want your opinion on this.
Okay.
Number 1 and number 2 receivers at yards after contact, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry. So to add that to you, TC, your thoughts on this trio?
I think that all three of those guys are, like you said, are very versatile. But for me, it's not even about what they can do as receivers, as pass catchers. I think I said this before. If those three guys can block, that's going to open that offense up completely, because now you can be in 11 personnel or 20 personnel and still run the ball out of that set because you got receivers that can block these guys. And that, to me, that is the biggest thing we have to make sure we can do. We got to be able to run the ball, because if you just dropping back, throwing the ball every single time, that's going to be tough on our offense. So if those three guys, not just pass catchers, if they can actually get out there and block, Lance, that was my thing, Lance.
I was just gonna say you sound like the blocking receiver. Hey, where's Cop?
You got to be able to block.
It's 21. Put Cop in as he. Yeah. Yeah.
But if those guys can block, it's going to open everything up for them. If they can block, the whole offense is going to open up.
Well, I think it's funny you say that, because Lance, literally the last show, TC's like, I go down there and I just block his ass off. I mean, it's so funny you say it like that, because literally 2 weeks ago he was preaching, we got to go down there and block, man. We got to go down there and block. We do have a question, though, from you for Ant Marshall to you, Lance. He says, #Ask Lance, how did you decide what dance you were going to do after a TD?
Social media, YouTube, whatever people were into, I guess, at the time. The few times that I scored, a couple touchdowns in the game, I luckily I had a couple ready, so I could just kind of do something. But I honestly I would practice. Like, people are like, oh, you probably in the hotel room dancing in the mirror. I'm like, yeah, I'm not about to, the first time I do a dance isn't about to be in front of thousands and thousands of people, or potentially millions of people watching on TV. Like, no, I'm not an idiot. But yeah, for me, I just always wanted to have fun out there. Like, you work so hard, and Cop can tell you, there's so much that goes into playing in the National Football League. Obviously, the fans only get to see what happens on Sundays. Or nowadays, it's a little bit different. You get access to training camp with NFL Network and practices and interviews and all those types of things. But I mean, you put so much time and effort in during the week, in your recovery, all those different things that lead up to the game. And for me, I was going to have fun out there, no matter what. Now, if we're getting our butts kicked, obviously it wasn't quite as fun. But so for me, I mean, obviously Cop and I both played with Joe Horn, and I was a fan of Joe even before I got to New Orleans. All the guys that really danced, Ocho Cinco, Steve Smith, I mean, all those guys that were doing dances, I was like, I want to do that someday. And so I made sure that I was ready when I scored touchdowns. And luckily for me, I was able to score a bunch of them in my career. And it was kind of a way to connect with the fans, too, on a different level. Like, not a lot of guys were doing a different touchdown dance every time. But that was something that I was like, I'm going to do something different every time. I want to keep it fresh. I don't want people to know what's coming. I mean, I'm obviously known as a touchdown dancer, or Mr. This and that. But it's something to keep it light out there and have a little bit of extra fun out there in the moment.
We used to be up in college. This is no lie. And I played at Southeastern Louisiana in Hammond. And so we would play on a Saturday and watch you guys on a Sunday, right? So y'all get in the red zone, okay? And we have one of our buddies, Luis Salpavaro, who played tight end, slot receiver, big Saints fan. He'd always say, throw that shit to Lance. I want to see his ass dance. And he gets so pissed at Sean too when you wouldn't catch the touchdown. That Monday night Green Bay game, if you remember, we didn't have, obviously Mondays are off, during college, and he'd be like, throw that bitch. And I'm just like, Luis, you gotta calm down. We're about to get evicted in this thing. Lance is gonna do it. I just thought that was always funny, when you say it like that, but the impact that it has for guys like, and you talk about watching those other guys, and TC, you've mentioned this before, but like us watching you guys and seeing that always happen. And one more in reference to the touchdown dances. Lance, I gotta ask you, the biggest catch that most will remember, obviously, in that 2-point conversion in the Super Bowl, man. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. What went through your mind, and what were you thinking? And when you look back on it now, and the immaculate catch, as New Orleans likes to call it a lot of times, do you ever think about it? Like, what was going through your mind then? Take our listeners through that.
I mean, in the moment, the only thing that was going through my mind was catch the ball. Like, and obviously when I catch the ball, it's like, okay, somehow I need to find the goal line so I can reach the ball over. And that was just, I mean, for me, it was just instinct. It wasn't anything other than that. It happened so fast. There's no time to really even think about it. Just having a little bit of a awareness of where my body is and where the ball needs to get to, I guess, in that split second. And that only comes with reps of having situations similar to that pop up in one way or another. And maybe not me falling on my head and having to reach backwards like that, but just having a body awareness of where I am and where I'm going. And I mean, I don't know. I guess after the play, I was like, I know I caught it. Like, what happened? Like, and so I went to the sideline, and one of the first, I don't remember who it was that I saw first. And they were like, I thought you had it. I'm like, shit, so did I. Like, what happened? And they were like, I think he kicked it out of your hand. I'm like, well, if he kicked it out of my hand, I mean, I'm already clearly across the goal line. That's gotta be a conversion. And as soon as I get over toward the bench, Sean was like, did you catch it? And, he's crazy. He's crazy during the games. Like, you don't want to be wrong in those moments for real. Cause then he's going to have that scowl, and he's going to be like, don't put his ass back in the game. But so he's like, did you catch it? And I'm like, yeah. And then he walks away, and I'm like, yeah, I think so. And, just kind of like under my breath. Cause I really didn't know. Like I felt like I caught it, but I wasn't sure that it would be overturned with replay. And so he's like, all right, I'm challenging it. And so obviously the whole time I'm a little bit nervous, like, oh man, I really hope we get this. I would like to go back in the Super Bowl. Like, I'd like to win the Super Bowl, and two, I'd like to be able to go back and play a little bit in the Super Bowl. But thankfully for us, it worked out, and the guy was a little bit slow to get there, and ended up kicking it out of my hands. And I mean, if people are like, oh, nowadays that's not a catch. I'm like, well, why is it not a catch? If he kicks it out of my hand, like, I don't know. I mean, it's a touchdown once you cross the goal line, I believe. But I'm not playing these days, so I don't even really care.
And you know what, to add to Lance's story, I was home. I think I was watching that game I was watching on TV. And if it's not Lance, I'm not just saying it because he's in front of me. If it's not Lance making that catch, that's not a touchdown. Lance got the best body control out of any receiver I've ever seen in my life. So if Lance is not catching that ball and reaching it over that way, another receiver couldn't do that. They don't have enough body control to do it. And Lance's body control is crazy. It's crazy out of this world. So if it wasn't for Lance catching that ball, it probably wouldn't have got caught or scored.
Right. So but look, it was my fault that catch was way harder than it should have been. Like, Cop, the play. Bunch right, whatever, Q8 speed smash. Like, it's the same nowadays as it was back then. Mm-hmm. And I was too deep in my alignment. So I was back 2 yards almost from where Colston was, who was on the line of scrimmage. I'm supposed to be like lined up on his feet. I'm not supposed to be 4 yards behind him. So as I'm breaking out, I'm sure Drew's like, oh shoot, he's already out there. He tries to get the ball out there. So I'm basically messing Drew up. It wasn't a bad ball by any means. I was lined up too deep. And had I been in my normal position, I probably would have been able to just catch the ball and walk into the end zone and then do a dance. Like, they robbed me I robbed myself of dancing in the Super Bowl, but we danced plenty of hours after the Super Bowl out there in South Beach. So I made up for it.
So was that something that you already knew after the play that you had lined up a little too far back, or like I envisioned Drew and you watching film of the game like after, and Drew be like, Lance, and y'all give each other the look, like that's how I imagine it happened.
Well, seeing the highlight millions of times after the game, I'm like, yeah, that's on me. But Drew and I have never even had that conversation because it worked out. You know what I mean? Like and after those games, you don't watch film after a Super Bowl. Like we got back to New Orleans and our party hats were on. Like there was no meetings with film sessions or anything like that. Like so. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely on me. I made it way harder than I should have. But then again, I wouldn't have been able to make that type of play in that type of moment or be remembered for that type of play if it just was a routine catch and run.
Well, it's interesting. You never really know what's going through someone's mind. Like I never knew that until you mentioned it. Like when your coaches say it's a game of inches. It literally is, run through the line. You guys, we all played somewhat higher level of football. Your strength coach yelling at your ass, run through the line. And Lance, when you say stories like that, it kind of makes me think about those days in the summer, 110-degree heat index and running through the line and every inch always mattering. It's just so crazy. I asked TC this a couple of weeks ago, I believe. But what is some of y'all's craziest or fun or best stories that you have in y'all's time in New Orleans or your time in New Orleans? I'm sure there's so many, but if there's some that you could share with our listeners.
I mean, there's a lot that I can't share.
hey, word for word. That's exactly what Cop said. 3 weeks ago to the day, Cop said, well, shit, I can't say some of these on air, but
yeah.
The hell not. And then all of a sudden we hear about getting off a bus and the fan waving something at TC, crazy. But some maybe that you can share.
Stories. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like stuff that's appropriate but entertaining.
Let me give you a level of where this show is already gone. You see, you want to tell the story, Lance? I'm not going to tell you a story. Go ahead and tell them. So it might make you feel better on a story you might be able to tell.
Okay, so Lance, when I was in Kansas City, you know how we was in San Diego. You know how the bus driving up to the game, and you driving up to the stadium, and you got the fans out there tailgating, and so that's what it was. We driving through the parking lot, fans tailgating, yelling at us, and it was this old lady, this old lady about 60, 70 years old. She had a black trench coat on. And so she ran up to the gate and she opened her trench coat up. And we looking like, yo, but this is what it was. She had a big old strap on, big old dildo on, and she just started swinging it at us. Like,
oh man.
Lance, she's 70. She's
you say that, and I live in San Diego, so she's probably still around my neck of the woods. Look, I know that there are crazy fans everywhere, but that's definitely a first. Like I've never heard of that one before. Like,
crazy.
Oh,
I mean, I've heard of drunk people at basketball games oiling up dildos and throwing them out on the court and stuff like that. But I've never heard of anybody rocking the strap on and swinging that thing at everybody.
She had it on.
Yeah, I honestly I don't think I have anything like that. I mean,
so
yeah,
you say from now on, it's completely fair game.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, I do have a crazy story, and I don't want to say his name, but
Fine.
This is like to give people a little bit of perspective of how far this organization has come from my rookie year. So we're talking 2005. So 17 years ago, obviously we're in San Antonio, displaced by Hurricane Katrina. And I was on the practice squad back then. And we had I think we were playing Buffalo, week 4, 2005. And we were playing Buffalo. And one of our coaches at the time was from Buffalo and had a bunch of buddies coming into town, to visit and hang out and come to the game. And, every week you have meetings the night before at the hotel. He shows up and he smells like booze, but, a lot of coaches go to dinner and, they have a couple glasses of wine or cocktails or whatever. So nobody really paid too much attention to him because he was still able to do his thing during meetings and talk to his players and all this. Fast forward next morning, it's a noon game, right? Central time zone. We're on the early schedule. We're playing the Bills, and warm-ups are going on, and everybody's like, "Where's Bob?" Bob was not there. And then the full team comes in. So we're talking 15 minutes before the game. Bob had just gotten there, and the equipment managers had to take him into the equipment room to change him out of his clothes from the night before. Now, and this is not a young coach. This is not a 27 or 35-year-old coach. And by this time, Bob had to be in his 50s, maybe even older. Like, he was not a young guy. He was not out partying and stayed out all night. So they changed him up. We go out. We're playing the game. And this is first quarter. And I'm a rookie, right? I had been cut by the Browns as a free agent guy, just signed to the Saints that week. This is my first week with the Saints on the practice squad. And we're winning the game early, and the defense is on the field at one point. And I look back to the benches. And Bob, no joke, I kid you not, Bob is laying down on the bench, hugging his playbook like this, with his legs up top of the bench, like where the backrest is, laying down during the game. Now, the Alamo Dome, I don't think it holds as many as the Superdome, but there's 60,000 people in there. Like, it's not like it's you can't take a nap in there. Dude was over there snoozing, and I'm like, and like a couple other practice squad guys, I'm like, what? I'm like, Bob is sleeping. They're like, what? And so everybody's looking, and nobody really made a big deal out of it. Somebody obviously went over there and woke him up. But I couldn't believe, but that was part of, I'm not saying that was the culture, but I'm just saying, like, that was the type of season that we were having. Like, and it was early at that point. We ended up 3-13. And I mean, I think everybody knows, like, just the difficulty that we had with being displaced and not really getting any help from the NFL, lack of facilities. I mean, all the things that could go wrong for a team. We had guys getting arrested like every week. We were literally the bad news bears. But for me, I was just like, I'm gonna keep doing everything I can to stay here. Like, this is my second chance, and I don't know if I'm gonna get a third one. So I need to do everything that I can to make sure I'm not getting in trouble. I'm showing up on time, and I'm doing everything that I can each and every day on that practice field so they keep me around. But long story short, we come in the next morning team meeting, and Coach Haslett was like, we had a coach that was doing X, Y, and Z, and he showed up late, and he was snoozing on the sideline during the game, and I'm going to suspend him, however long he suspended him. And he's like, I want him to give you guys an apology. And Bob is up there crying, and this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and blah, 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 blah. And I was thinking, like, this wasn't the hardest thing you had to do. The hardest thing you had to do was get dressed before that game yesterday because he couldn't do it on his own. But, man, like, that was like, that's just one of the many stories. Like, I've got a lot of stories from that specific season, especially with Crazy Joe. I'll give another little quick one real quick. Joe Horn, obviously everybody knows and loves Joe, one of the greatest receivers to ever do it. But obviously one of the biggest personalities to ever do it too. And I learned that quick. First day I get to New Orleans, I'm there bright and early. I'm in the receiver room. Coach is like, hey, you sit right here. And slowly but surely before the receiver meeting, all the guys start trickling in. We had Devery Henderson and Nate Poole and Dante Stallworth and Levon Thomas. And then I'm sitting at this table by myself, and I'm so green. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who else was coming in. I don't even really care. So Joe, at one point, during the meeting, obviously he's late. So he walks in, and Jimmy's up on the board talking about whatever plays we're putting in this week. And this is my very first day. Like, I don't know anybody. I'm literally just sitting down, and Joe sits at the table right next to me, And Jimmy's, on the board, and Joe raises his hand. Jimmy turns around. He's like, Joe, what, man? You come in late at my meeting. What do you want? He said, Jimmy, what the fuck is this? Talking about me. I was like, oh, man. Like, this dude is about to be on me this whole time. But those are some of the stories, like, of that year and that team and the comedy. Another story about Joe, one day he comes in late after practice for a meeting, got a stack of cookies about this high, and just smacking. Like we're watching film and just smacking his cookies. And Jimmy's like, all right, Joe, you show up late. Let me get one of your cookies. He said, hell no, nah, Jimmy. I'm not giving you any of my cookies. And he said, Joe, don't do that to me. Don't be like that. No, he said, oh, no, Jimmy, you don't get any of my cookies. No, you got any of that. And so Jimmy's like, all right, Joe, be like that. And Joe's like, yeah, I'm going to be like that. And so he goes back. He's talking about the play, blah, 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 blah. He said, hold on, Jimmy. And Jimmy's like, what, Joe? He's like, anybody else want a cookie? And everybody just starts dying. But he used to give Jimmy Robinson the blues, but it was always like in good fun. He would like, and he helped, like he really helped us like in a season that was so long and so tough. I mean, I wasn't even playing in those games, and it was tough for me. I can only imagine the guys that were, putting it all on the line every Sunday and coming up short. But he really helped make it light. He was just a good dude. Like he was crazy, but he wanted the ball, which I mean, we all wanted the ball. But he was like, for me that year, I mean, he really helped me a whole lot, both on and off the field, and he helped take care of things that I had going on. I mean, he was awesome for me, and really a really fun teammate to have, and really just I mean, he was crazy, and but also he did it on the field too. So obviously the guys that are the great ones have a little bit more leash, and he definitely was one that would pull that thing about as far as he could take it.
Probably like a cell phone. I digress though.
Hey Lance, I got something for you because I said this the other day. Have you ever seen Joe get tired? I've never seen Joe get tired. Like we in practice, we had like 15 plays on the practice sheet, and Joe would take all of them if the coach would let him, and he would not get tired. I've never seen Joe tired.
Right. Well, he also didn't want anybody else getting reps.
True.
I mean, that was like 2005, same season. We're playing the New York Jets Sunday Night Football, and Joe made a couple of plays in a row, and Jimmy tried to get him out to put Devery in for whatever the play was, and Joe looked at Devery and said, "No." And Devery stood behind the huddle, and Joe put his back to him like this, and Devery's trying to grab at him, and Joe said, "No." And Devery had to run right back out, and Jimmy's on the sideline, man, just getting mad, but like. That was part of his competitiveness. Like he wanted to be the guy. He wanted to get the reps. He wanted to make the plays. And I mean, shoot, I'm not mad at him. I just wish I had the balls to be able to do something like that myself, but I didn't.
It's so weird. In 2006, Joe's holding his then son, okay, JC, and to see that young man go to South Carolina, lock dudes down like at LSU. And really hold his own. It's crazy how this game of football works. Like I remember the picture, even before Drew and his son and the iconic photo with the earmuffs. But JC was the one for us, like, hey man, that dude's a first round corner. I mean, it's insane, man, to think what that family has produced in the NFL.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's pedigree. I mean, obviously he was basically groomed for this, him and his brothers. I mean, I think either one or two of the other brothers have spent time in the NFL, which is, I mean, even more crazy that the dad obviously has had all pro type career. And then he's got sons that have played in the NFL, one that was a top 10 pick. Yeah, I mean, that's just awesome, man.
So let me ask y'all this, because both of you played for Sean, and this will kind of be getting back to the field, and this will be my last one about Sean, but TC knows what I'm probably going to ask you. Lance, how often do you follow this thing with Sean and his name constantly coming up in this coaching room or that coaching room? Or today on the NFL Network, it was nothing but the Dallas Cowboys again. What do you make of all this? And TC, to you too. I mean, it's kind of, I know we're in the dead season, of football, and there's not a lot to talk about, but what are y'all's thoughts when y'all hear that?
I honestly don't pay too much attention to it. Like if there's something on Twitter that I see, I mean, I might read it. But Sean is a hot commodity. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, he's a coach that is a proven guy. He understands the game. He understands how to be a head coach in this league. And then obviously his offense is one of the best that we've seen in the National Football League. So I understand why he gets the rumor mill rolling over him 24/7, because I'm sure there's more than half the National Football League that would love to have him as their head coach. So I understand it. I don't put too much time into it. I don't think he would have taking a break to try to force his hand to get somewhere else this season. I think he'll take a year off, maybe 2 years off, and kind of figure things out from there. I mean, I think he just needed a break. And Sean is a unique bird, personality wise, and he is as workaholic as they come. A guy that spends an inordinate amount of hours at the facility, talking ball, looking at film, studying players and tendencies, studying other offenses, trying to come up with new and innovative things to do offensively. I mean, he is very, very obsessive about football and offense. And, for a head coach, there's a lot more responsibility than people understand. I mean, you are the CEO of now 90 guys. And you've got to make sure that everybody is operating in the right manner. You've got to keep tabs on guys. You got to make sure that your coaches are doing the right things, and obviously consistently trying to get better. I mean, it's more than just calling the plays on Sunday. I mean, he had a whole lot on his plate, especially in New Orleans, where Mickey Loomis is I would say a little more hands off than some of the GMs in the National Football League, and allows Sean to really make stuff happen there. I'm not saying Sean is yaying or naying all the plays, or he was doing, or all the players. But I guarantee you he had a hand in a lot of the selection process that was going on. And, who wouldn't want their coach to be one of the main guys that's pulling the trigger as far as who's going to be in his locker room or who's going to be running his offense out there. So I get it. Look, I understand that he's walking away from a lot of money, but if and when the time comes again for him to be ready, he's going to get even more money. So, I think he just needed a break, a refresher. I would love to have him back in New Orleans, but I think that ship has kind of sailed, and I think DA is the right guy. I mean, I really do. It's funny. I'm sure Cop is on board with me. Like back in 2006, DA was the assistant D-line coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
I would have never thought that he would have been a head coach, let alone a head coach right after Sean in New Orleans. So he's obviously come a long ways. He's grown. He's learned. He was a head coach before, which I think is going to be so beneficial for him this second time around. And again, usually when a coach becomes a head coach after another coach leaves, it's because he gets fired. And they usually get fired because the team stinks. Well, that's not the situation with this team. This team had a pretty good season last year, obviously not to our standard, but a winning record. And the coach just happened to get exhausted and wanted to take time off. So he inherits a roster that's playoff ready. So it's a completely different situation than most coaches that are going to be new head coaches this year that are basically taking on teams that stunk last year. I honestly do believe in this team, and I believe in this coaching staff. And I honestly think that the sky's the limit. I think the NFC is up for grabs for sure. The AFC is going to be a lot more highly contested than the NFC is. I think the NFC is about a 2, 3, maybe 4 team race to the Super Bowl, and I think that we fit right into that mix.
TC,
man, look, he done hit everything on the head. Like I can't even, there's nothing else to say behind it. Everything he said, he's correct about it, especially with Coach Payton, with the fact that, I think he just needed some time off because it's a grind. And a lot of people don't understand that grind when you're in the NFL as a coach or a player. But even as coaches, they get there, about 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes they don't get home until about 11 o'clock at night. So it is a steady grind. And, I just feel like
and they don't have the type of offseason that the players have.
Right.
Like the season is over. They have to do reports on all the players. They have to get ready for free agency. They have to get ready for the draft. They have to do the game planning for their OTAs and the mini camp and stuff like it. Like we get a break. We get to leave after the season and take time off, and then we come back when it's OTA time. But like they don't get that. And even now, mini camp happened last week. Those coaches aren't going on vacation for the next 6 weeks. They might get 1-2 weeks off, then they're right back in there on the grind again, getting ready for training camp. So it's like I totally understand, and that's one of the main reasons for me why I didn't want to go into coaching. Like I don't want to spend more time in football coaching than when I was playing. Like no, I'm good. Like I got a young family, I got young kids. Like I'm not trying to do that. Like I'm good. Now it's some people can. And they work that out with their families, or some guys just don't have families and they go right into that. But it just wasn't for me.
Well, on my end, I got a son in college. My daughter just graduated, and my youngest son, he just started high school. So I'm looking to get into coaching.
There you go. Well, it's the perfect time, but you didn't do it right out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect time.
Lance, you talked about Dennis Allen, and it's that I remember the photo after the Pelicans playoff game, right? And they showed Dennis Allen and Sean Payton sitting next to each other. And then I forget whoever it was took the photo of Dennis Allen, and he's sitting in the Saints film room, right? And just sitting there, and he's just watching. He was wearing the same clothes from the playoff game less than 8 hours ago. So in semblance showing, like, he didn't go home. He walked across the street, right? And when you go 8-28 and you have something that you have to prove, look, that we saw it in Tampa. That was his audition, okay? And he blanked Tom Brady, the GOAT, which some will argue is the greatest of all time quarterback-wise. And I was kind of sold on Dennis then, if I'm being honest. You know, like, hey, man, not only did you blank Tom Brady, but you blanked him on the road. And in a short week, you're coming off a Monday night game. I think, what was it, the week before was Miami. Remember when Ian Book had to start and all that? I mean, just crazy week, and he was able to propel through that. So I bring part. Lance, at least for me, brother, one more, and I'll get you out of here. Obviously, everybody remembers the Super Bowl, and everybody remembers all the great stuff that you guys did when you were in New Orleans. Is there one memory on the field outside of the Super Bowl, however, that you remember the most?
Yeah, easy. The Key and Peele touchdown celebration. I mean, obviously I played 11 years and, you know, won a lot of games, lost a lot of games, scored a lot of touchdowns, was fortunate enough to catch a lot of balls from some great quarterbacks. I think the three guys that I caught passes from the most, I think Drew, Big Ben, and Stafford will all end up being Hall of Fame guys. I understand how fortunate I was to be, you know, in huddles with those guys. But yeah, the Key and Peele touchdown celebration, because it was such a big deal then. I was the first one to do the three pumps. You know, and it's crazy too, because that was around the time, obviously, they were so big, and Kenny Stills and I and all the other receivers in the locker room would talk about, man, one of these days, like, we need to do, you know, we need to do that. We need to do the three pumps. We need to do the three pumps. But we never, ever actually planned it. So when it happened in that game, that Tampa game, which was the last game of the season, 2013, catch a long touchdown, I just turn around, not thinking that Kenny was going to be anywhere near me. I was going to do the three pumps no matter what. But as soon as I turn around with the hands on the back of my head, he's right there. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I do the three pumps. He throws his towel flag. Then we get the penalty flag. We come over to the sideline. Everybody's booing. Sean is bitching us out because we got a 15-yard penalty for unsportsmanlike, because obviously back then it was still the no fun league and we couldn't celebrate together and we couldn't use props. So this happens. Then literally like the next day, Monday morning, Jordan Peele, or maybe it was Monday or Tuesday, Jordan Peele had a T-shirt with me like this and Kenny Stills like this, counting my pumps, that he posted on social media. He was wearing it. I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. So obviously, like it, you know, do all this stuff that, you know, try to get his attention on social media. And my buddy's like, hey, I'm friends with one of the producers of the Key and Peele show. So I'm like, yeah, hit him up. Like, see if I can, you know, go to LA and meet the guys. It'd be super cool. And he was like, I'm gonna better that. I'm gonna see if I can get you on the show. I said, shoot, even better. Like, I want to do a little bit of acting anyway. So he calls me like a couple of days later. Hey, they're gonna put you in an episode. They're gonna be shooting the whole final season. This next cycle or whatever. You'll fly out to LA. And I was dating my wife back then, who lived in San Diego. I was like, easy. I'll be in San Diego most of the summer anyway. I'll shoot up to LA. We'll do whatever. So the day before we were going to shoot, his buddy, who's the producer, was like, man, we have Lance in this sketch and he's kind of just an extra in the background. And like, you know, would he like a sketch with some lines? And my boy's like, hell, he's speaking for me. He's like, hell yeah, like give him some lines. And so he hits me up like, we're going to try to get you a sketch with some lines. And I'm like, hold on, I'm going to get the lines the day before I'm shooting. And he's like, yeah, bro, you can handle it. It's not that big of a deal. I'm like, bro, you realize, like, I've just been in little low budget commercials. Like, I ain't never been on a sketch comedy TV show. Like, I kind of need some practice. And so he ends up getting me in this sketch, gives me my lines, and obviously I'm super nervous. I can play football in front of millions of people and be straight, but being in front of these two comedy icons, I was so nervous. But when from the moment I met them, they were so cool and so like just like, hey, you need anything, let us know if you need anything. We got your back, we'll help you through everything. And from that point on, I was like, okay, I think I have a chance. But the most scary moment was when we had to do a read. Like, obviously, I hadn't been with these guys. I haven't been able to rehearse. And so right before we're going to go shoot, Jordan Peele's like, hey, everybody off this van. Everybody gets off the van. We get in a circle. We have our script. And my hands are like this. Like, I couldn't stop shaking. I was like, oh, man, here we go. And so they just start going, boom, right off the top of their head. Everybody's going back and forth. And then I say my first line. And Jordan Peele's like, hold up. It's silent. And I'm like, oh, no, they're going to kick me off of this sketch. And he goes, thank God Lance Moore can act. And I was like, oh, like a weight was just lifted off of my shoulders. And I was like, man, that's all I needed to hear. And then for the rest of the day, I was on point. I was getting better as the day was going on. And, and I'm still getting paid from SAG from that show. So it's pretty freaking cool. Just the one sketch that I was on. But to be a part of that, man, was awesome. And that's why that moment for me is like one of the biggest and one of the coolest moments.
Man, that's gotta be insane. I mean, the craziest part about your whole story, at least to me, obviously it's gonna be about money. Bro, how long is it and you still getting a check in the mail? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's at the royalties. I'm a part of SAG. So I have my SAG card, and any other time that I do things that are involved with SAG, I get my check mailed to me. I'm not getting paid millions of dollars for being in one sketch, but I am. I mean, it's pretty cool. I would have paid to go on that show. Like they didn't have to pay me, but I got paid for that day, and then I'm getting royalties as a result of being on that show. But to your point though, I like coming from where I came from, man. Like my life has been awesome. I've been blessed. I've been able to do things and go places and shoot, man. Without football, I don't know where the heck I am these days. So. I don't ever take it for granted. I understand how fortunate I've been, and I know that I owe just about everything I have to the game of football. So,
man,
this has been go TC.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of ask Lance what he got. What is he doing now? I know the people want to hear what's going on with you now. What you have going on?
Yeah, so during the season, I work for WDSU, which is the NBC station in New Orleans. I'm part of the Saints on Six group with Coach Jim Mora, Fletcher Mackel, sometimes Travers, and Sharif Ishak.
You
we
get
do the live
up, right? The Mackles. Look, when I see him in media, I'm like, bro, one of you got to part your hairs a different way, bro.
well, luckily Travers has his hair a little bit longer than Fletcher these days, so I can understand which one is which. But so I do that during the season. We do the live pre and post game shows, and then obviously I do a weekly spot via Zoom with them, and along with a few other media things on the side. As soon as the season is over, I work for Exos, which is a performance facility out here in San Diego. I am their combine wide receiver coach, so I have a couple of guys each off season, I guess you could say, leading up to the combine that are working towards the draft. A couple of years ago, I had Kadarius Toney, who was a first-round pick. This year, I had 4 guys. 3 of my guys ended up getting drafted, and I like to tell people that I can't take any credit for that. I just try to help tighten them up a little bit before it's time for them to go and show out. I do that, and then I'm also an influencer on social media with my wife. And it's fun. I didn't expect it to be kind of what it is, but companies and brands are reaching out for us to be ambassadors or to do deals with them. And it's paid for a bunch of house renovations and other things for the kids. And so it's a cool little thing for us to do together and really just make some free, easy money.
TC, I love you. I'm going into the acting business.
For real. Look, I need to go too.
To death, but this shit's for the birds, if you ask me.
For real. And look, and not just to say it because you're in front of us, Lance, and we're good friends, but you definitely, of course, we gotta give a shout out to Devery and Fast Freddy. They just got inducted to the Saints Hall of Fame.
Yes, sir.
You should be the next one in there, and I'm not just saying it because
I went in before all of them.
I didn't even know you was in.
Yeah, I went in the Saints Hall of Fame in 2018. Me and Pierre.
There we go.
Yeah.
You should definitely be in there.
I think it's because they have like a certain amount of years that you can be out or whatever, and I had been 5 years removed from my time with the Saints, and then obviously Colston had a better career than me, but was there a year longer, so he ended up going. Him and Reggie went the year after me, and then Jari, I think, and Roman went the year after that. I'm surprised they waited so long for Devery, but I'm happy that he got in and happy for Fast Freddie because these are guys that are integral parts to what New Orleans was and became. So
that's right.
Shout out to those guys.
That Devery story. If you listen to the opening interview, they were like, "Well, it should have been sooner." But Devery said every time we pick up the phone and ask him to come join us, he says, "I'm out here fishing, so I'll call you back."
Yep. Seriously, Devery is the worst, man, when it comes to being on point with texting people back or calling people back. He just kind of gets to you when he gets to you, and he's just not bothered by too much. And I mean, that was like, that's kind of how he's always been. And so that's why even nowadays, if I text him and he'll text me back like 3 months later, I don't trip. He's not doing it maliciously. That's just how Devery is.
Right.
It's like the Bluegrass Miracle, the catch that he had for LSU against Kentucky. And I'll never forget this, and Pooh Bear, our producer, probably remembers this. Jim Hawthorne or whoever it was goes up to Devery, and they said, "What do you just called a Hail Mary, craziest play we've ever seen. What do you think?" He looks in the camera, dead ass. He goes, "Thanks." And he like walks. Thanks. I'm like, dog. Fuck. I mean, thanks. And that old Cajun accent, man, God, just so perfect. But congratulations to him too, man. That wide receiver core y'all have had in New Orleans is insane, bro. I mean, just ridiculous. Anyway,
I think we were so good because we all just wanted everybody else to be successful. Yep. And that's not, I don't feel like that's super common, that everybody was everybody else's biggest cheerleader. Everybody wanted everybody else to go out there and be successful and they eat. Because we felt like if Cop was balling, we're all balling. If Colston is balling, we're all balling. Right. Devery and me and like everybody, that was, to me, that was one of the important parts of our group.
Lance, very quickly, but Sean and Cop, I want you to get in on this too. The rotations that Sean would do. The last question from me, though. Like it was a big thing, at least from a fan's perspective or someone that broke the game down. Even in the later part of Sean, last year, they talked about a lot, the different packages that Sean had. I mean, to know all of that from a personnel standpoint, I mean, how much do you have to really learn in the offseason? This package means this call means this. Or was it more simplistic than what it looks like from someone on the outside? If that makes any kind of sense, like the different formations, packages that you guys had in New Orleans.
Well, I think most of Sean's offense is concept based. So if you understand what the concept is, everything else is pretty simple. What I mean by concept, the concept is what routes go together on this play. Those are the concepts. It's really easy once you understand the concepts, because the personnel groupings are changing just about every play, which means there's going to be different characters on the field. Not only do the personnel groupings change, but those personnel groupings have tags to them, which would put me at the Z and put Cop at the F and put Colston at the X, right? But we are okay with that because we know the formations and then we know the concepts. So as long as you know that, I mean, we had a bunch of guys that knew a lot of different positions. That really is what helped us as well. And I know Cop is one of those guys that kind of had to get in and just learn everything, kind of similar to me. Like, you have to know everything. And if you have multiple guys that know everything, it really makes it simple because we all understand the concepts. That to me is what simplifies it for guys that have played enough ball to be able to break it down that way.
I think the funniest part about that was Drew talking about the mistake in Seattle. I think the playoff game that the Saints won, I think it was Marcus Colston's last year, and he was lined up in the F, and he wasn't supposed to, but there wasn't enough time on the play clock left, and they only had one timeout, and Drew just said, F it. Colston's down there somewhere. I'm going to throw it. Touchdown, ball game. It's like he said the one mistake that he remembers Marcus making like vividly on a formation or packaging was that one. He's like, shit, he gonna be down there somewhere. I'm just gonna throw it. Those are the stories that I think everybody likes to hear. Lance are down there somewhere. I'm just gonna throw it.
Yeah, I mean,
You
got. Sometimes you just have to make something happen, and that's definitely one of those moments.
Well, I'll never forget. We were on because we have the LSU podcast show, whatever, too, and Joe Burrow against Oklahoma when Jefferson had the 4 touchdowns. He literally comes off to the sidelines, and we're sitting there. I was like, I'm going to try to listen to what he said. He walks over and, God forgive me, XM, we love you. He said, fuck it. Jamar Chase is down there somewhere. It just like, look, man, I mean, and that's how I felt about, like, you could tell Drew was kind of like the wide. See, you guys didn't see the TV copies like we did, right? When Drew's wide-eyed, and you can read the lips like, what just happened? Like, well, how did that just work? But anyway, all right, Lance, man, from me, from everybody here, thank you so much for joining us as our first official guest. You've been fantastic, man. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Thank you guys, man. Awesome. Let me know we can do it again.
Hey,
Definitely.
man, don't threaten me with a good time. Don't threaten me with a good time. Just got to make sure we know which one's Fletcher and with the hair.
Right.
Next time we'll be all right. All right, guys. My name is Blake Ruffino. TC has been with us, and Lance Moore has been our guest. We'll see you guys again soon. Y'all have a good night. Peace out, Girl Scouts.